So we talk about the mind of equanimity. Right? We talk about equipoise, physical stability. We talk about these as a stage in the practice of calm abiding and concentration. And I always use the word stage very cautiously, right? Because I don't mean to imply sequential checklist of realizations and accomplishments. There's a useful way of breaking down preliminary practice, and the concentrated mind, the smoothly concentrated mind that has settled into a state of equanimity. That's a useful foundation for all practice, as well as being a useful condition in itself. So the aspiration for the concentration practice, the aspiration of calm abiding, is this state of mind that we can call equanimity. Now, what that looks like is a mind that is not distracted, right? A mind free from distraction. But what do we mean by distraction? When I use the word distraction, it can mean things that pull me from the practice as I'm seated. It can mean things that prevent me from getting to the practice in the first place. Sort of obstructions to my practice are a form of distraction. And there are different approaches, different impacts, but kind of a similar treatment. Right. So let's start with the bulk or the gross, the bulky, the distraction, which is not getting to practice in the first place. Right. It's important to get to the cushion. Now, of course, as our practice stabilizes, the distinction between the time on the cushion and the time walking around in daily life merges, right? Everything becomes practice in a certain way. But I certainly need to carve out disciplined time that says, now I'm going to practice. Now I'm going to explore, experiment, experience meditation in a way that is easier when I'm sitting on the cushion. Okay. But if I am drowsy, that can manifest as laziness, sluggishness. For me, that is the number one distraction. I have a real tendency to be overly considerate of my rest. So maybe that's a nice way of saying that I have a tendency towards being a bit lazy, physically, mentally. For other people, the distraction is sort of overly energized mind, and there's 1,000 things that you're doing at home or at work that occupy you, consume you, and distract you from even getting into the temple, into your meditation area, onto the cushion. The antidote to both of those is discipline, but the aspect of discipline that is sort of confidence in the practice. So when I'm here's what happens for me most mornings. I get up early to practice, but what I do instead is instead of getting up and washing my face and then making coffee and dealing with the animals and then sitting, I will lie down on the couch for an hour, sleeping or dozing or listening to a podcast or whatever. It's slothful, and it's absolutely a distraction, because often what happens is I do that for such a long time that then I realize I now have to rush to get my meditation in before my workday starts, or I've left it too long and I have to figure out how to add the practice time in later in the day. It's absolutely a distraction from practice. And we all have things like that, and they all seem absolutely compelling. Good reasons why we aren't practicing, because maybe they are. But that's where the confidence in knowing that the hour spent practicing is more beneficial than the hour spent sleeping. Once you've had enough sleep, don't sleep 3 hours in order to practice, right? There's a balance. So those are obstacles and distractions that prevent us from getting to the cushion. Once we're sitting, then distractions take the form of various phenomena, right? They can be physical phenomena like a pain in the knee, or they can be a thought. And the physical distraction I find a bit harder to deal with, because who likes to sit with pain? I think there's a sensible way to look at this. So here's what I ask myself when I sit and my knee hurts, my left knee hurts when I sit, unless I've adjusted to just the right position before I start. Now, once I start to sit, I like to apply the discipline and say, I'm not going to move from this pose. So I pick a pose that I think I can hold. That's the first. To avoid the distraction of physical discomfort by being a little bit kinder to myself and not getting in such a tight pose that I know I'm going to have problems. If my nose itches, there's some things that we can start with. Like, so my nose itches, and I can separate the feeling of wanting to scratch my nose from the actual phenomena of whatever's going on. I ask myself, my nose itches. Well, what is that really? It's a twitch or a tightness or something that in its appearance is just a shift in energy, right? The story that says I need to scratch my nose is just that. It's an embellishment on that experience. And it's quite an easy one to start with, right? Because there isn't a poisonous dart stuck in my nose. There's no reason for me to do anything. So I can use it as an opportunity to not become distracted in the first place, and observe the sequence of phenomena, feeling like I don't like that, mental perception, which is a story that I tell myself about it, can actually be a useful part of the practice. And if I have confidence in the discipline that I've said, I'm not going to move during this practice, then I won't. Now, there are other cases where I ask myself a slightly different question, which is, do I think I will be able to walk again if I don't adjust right now? And if the answer is no, I don't think I'll be able to walk, well, do I really? It's the same process. It's just got a slightly more urgent value to it. If I had a knife stuck in my knee, I would move. I would take the knife out, and I would call an ambulance. It might feel like I have a knife stuck in my knee, but I don't. And I know that I would be able to stand up afterwards. But look, for physical distraction, at the end of it, move. Adjust the pose, right? But do it without leaving the meditative state, right? It becomes a distraction when the sensation or the reaction to the sensation take you away from the concentration on the breath. Both can be happening at the same time. Right, so that dialogue that I have with, do I have a dagger in my knee? No, I don't need to move. That I consider sort of dharma voice. Right, that voice is not taking me away from my practice. You may think differently. Right, if I truly were in like the 9th stage of samadhi, and it'd be a different. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when we are first really stabilizing our practice. How do we get over some of these hurdles that can really derail practice early on, or even, in my case, I've been practicing 15 years, and I still have to remind myself that I don't have a spear through my knee. So physical sensations. I think the best thing to do is to, when you feel physical discomfort, is to first separate the actual energetic phenomenon. Whatever, note it as best as possible and separate that from the reaction, because it's the reaction that we can control, and it's the reaction that drives the distraction. Now, for thoughts, this is probably what I typically mean when I talk about distraction practices. I've set myself the practice to concentrate on breath and to really deepen in. And in that practice, there will be thoughts. The mind creates thoughts. But in the concentration space, the calm abiding space, thoughts can come and go, and I do not attach to them. So the distraction comes when the thought becomes so attractive that I follow it. I follow it to, and attractive could be in a negative sense. You know what I mean? Like, it could be an anxious thought that's so compelling that my mind becomes totally occupied with worry or thoughts about what the rest of the day is going to be like, or what happened yesterday. Anything other than concentration on the breath in the moment. And it's remarkable, isn't it, how we can be sitting and suddenly realize that I haven't watched my breath for 2 minutes. The practice, in the practice, that diminishes. The volume of thoughts will eventually diminish, but that isn't the thing to look for, right? The first stage in sort of equanimity is to just recognize that there is a thing called a thought that is not the same as you, the thinker, and you don't have to allow it to obscure the practice or to become the entire focus of your attention. That the first times that happens, it's really eye-opening. Right? We are not our thoughts. That's the learning from this stage of recognizing the thought and not being distracted by it. We are not those thoughts. We are an embodiment that has thoughts, and by all accounts, we need to pay attention to those thoughts often in our life. We're not brainless. We're not zombies. But in the meditation practice, the accomplishment of equanimity, right, the stabilization of the mind comes when a thought can be observed but not followed. And the distracted mind is the mind that follows the thought. Now, the good thing about that is that the awakened mind is the mind that recognizes that it's been distracted. So, with each distraction, there's no cause to be frustrated. Instead, when I recognize that I have been distracted, I pay attention to what that feels like. So, good, right? Distraction is the embodiment of attention away from the object of attention. It's that simple. Good. Yes. Keep your wits about you. Any questions? Drop them in the comments. And I will be back here again soon.